if you're a network or a publisher, what do you think the guiding metric should be? Like, what should they optimize for to make a buyer's life really easy?
Wow. That is a great question. I'm like processing right now. I mean, part of it is this. Part of it is being easy to work with, because once again, fundamentally, the mantra is if you're easy to work with, if you're, people want to work with people as much as it matters who the host of the show is. And it's that great, fancy, shiny thing here on the shelf. But like, people want to work with people. And if you're easy to work with, I'm going to continue to come back to you. I'm going to find a way to work with you. I'm going to come back to you and say, Cam, you're so good to work with, but your CPMs are a little bit too high. You're so good to work with, but this host does rough around the edges host reads. Can we figure that out? I think first and foremost, people want to work with people. And then I think one of the biggest hurdles we run into now, as we have more and more of these clients that are planning on the fly, like your fairy tale as a client comes to you and says, this is my budget for October. But the reality of it is the last week of May, I'm frequently getting budget for June. So it's, how do I work with you easily? How do you get back to me quickly? How are your prices fair? Can we have a conversation like this?
This is the Titans of Advertising podcast, an interview series where we go behind the scenes with some of the leaders, agency experts, marketers that have literally built up modern day advertising before there was a playbook for it. If you're a CMO, marketer, agency expert, or even a founder, this is where you can tune in to get the latest know-how of how to make advertising work for you.
Welcome to the Titans of Advertising podcast, brought to you by Pepsi. Back in the screen, please. Okay, we're on. Pepsi, thank you. We love you. We love your drinks and your brand. Over to you, Luke. Tell us a little bit about you.
That is what we call a shameless plug. A little bit about me. Wow, I don't even know where to begin.
Okay, let's. Who are you? What do you do? And where do you live?
Okay, so I am Luke Slota. I live in the metropolis of Binghamton, New York, upstate New York. For those of you not looking at a map, give or take 3 hours northwest of New York City. Currently now I work at the Out Loud Group. I'm the head of our podcast team. What exactly does that mean? Like I'm one part business development, one part running the team that does all the buying and planning. And then I directly, indirectly always am wearing a strategy hat, trying to think about like, what is the next move for a brand? What is the next campaign we should be running? What is the next partnership?
Can we take a closer look at your strategy hat?
Sure. I wish I had one of those like way oversized, like sombrero, like the 5-gallon bucket hats. That would be much more appropriate for the context of this discussion.
So where did your advertising career begin? I mean, you got a fascinating story.
I'm here by mistake, although I think a lot of people in the podcast space would say that this is just what did Bob Ross call it? Like a happy little accident or whatever he would say when he made a mistake. I am, based on my education, a high school history teacher. So I was in the military right out of high school, super, super proud of my service to this country. And then I went to college and I kind of was a little bit mixed up. Like I didn't know what I wanted to do. I think in the back of my mind, I thought my high school history teacher had like a great life, like summers off and you get to shape young minds and whatever. And honestly, I loved the teaching aspect of it. It was the politics of it where I was like, this is not for me. This is not for me long term. I kind of sort of stumbled into like a sales job when I decided I didn't want to teach, not marketing specific.
What were you selling again?
I was selling
sales job. Tell us what it was.
I was selling heating and air conditioning parts, like lead generation. I knew nothing about it, like nothing at all about it. But I was like on the phone and eventually like knocking on doors and doing this like lead generation where like I would start a lead to some sort of contractor or some sort of project and I would pass it off to someone that was smarter than me. So it was just like being a people person, like being on the phone all day and building relationships and who trusts who. And, you know, that was a really like dog eat dog business where like whoever got in first kind of tended to stay there forever unless you had some sort of in. And I think that kind of built me up to where I am today where like, you know, if you're really, really good to people, people want to work with good people. And hopefully that was like the flight path or trajectory of like how my career got where it is. But ultimately did this for a handful of years. Fast forward, going through some personal stuff, some health issues. I met my wife. We had a brand new baby. And it was like I was at this crossroads of going back to school. I wanted to pursue my MBA because I thought that would be the next twist in the road that would like help me in this sales world. And a friend of a friend introduced me to a gentleman who had a marketing agency in upstate New York. Now, what I didn't know, and his story is way more interesting than mine, but like he had a large business downstate in New York. This was almost like a satellite office, or that was the original plan. And we were doing display, we were doing affiliate, and he had this like vision for what podcasting would. Stage left, Luke enters in, and like the premise of the job was like kind of sort of part-time, kind of sort of to like help me out with health insurance and finances and whatever. And this podcasting thing might be something down the road. He was betting on it. But the display part of the business was like the real, heavier portion of the business from a revenue standpoint. And I end up going to this like 7-person office here in upstate New York, where ultimately I'm going to find new podcast networks. Like I'm a podcast buyer, but in reality, circa 2013, 14, like there were no real podcast networks outside.
Who were the early movers, the brands that you started with?
So the early on the brand side, so like when I first started, there were like 3 brands that people knew of. You had your team at ZipRecruiter. What was it? MailChimp was really, really big. And then Audible.
Wait, so ZipRecruiter is still in the game. They've been like, and Audible, they've been there for a while.
Yeah, no, super, super, super valuable. Long tail lifetime value, I think, for both of them, both heavily focused on direct response, but they both seem to, with giving some sort of grace in between episodes, constantly changing up partnerships. I think both of their offers have stayed the same, but they've been able to have a very, very long lifespan here in the space, which I think not only has helped both of them gain new customers, but really, really the lifetime value that they have. So my particular shop was handling the audiobook business. And as I was getting into the space, that was when all of the it was like this wave of those direct to consumer brands came in, where it was the mattress companies. It was the razor companies. It was the eyeglasses. It was like all those disruptors that had the same talking points that were like, why go to Target and buy this when we can send it direct to your doorstep? And candidly, like this is many, many years before COVID. I hate the fact that everything in my mind
is this the next wave of like you had, your Mad Men era with the Colgates and those, and then this is now the digital influencer based marketing with your razor companies and your, it seems a phase in history.
Yeah, well, especially podcast history. Like that was that first wave, because you didn't yet have your blue, as I call them, like blue chip branding awareness plays of the Progressives and the Toyotas and the cellular companies and the, insert name of big brand that, right now is spending in the podcast space, literally just to get as many ears, or now with the video element that we deal with day in and day out, the eyeballs there. Yeah, these folks were entering in. For many of them, it was the first channel they ever ran for marketing. So candidly, from an attribution standpoint, it wasn't how many sales did we get from podcasting versus Meta. It was every sale we get now, we're crediting back to the podcast channel. Because in those early days, there was no pixel tracking. Maybe some clients had like some sort of like Heidi how did you hear about a survey? But it was a promo code, it was a URL, and the halo was everything else we're going to give credit for to the podcast channel, because this is the only paid marketing we're doing right now.
And you successfully, obviously, proved it out that the promo codes are working. Attribution now looks very different than it did back then. And so what was the playbook back then? Or do we not talk about that?
The playbook back then was heavily relying on the client to send you data on a rolling weekly basis so you could tie it back to whatever URL or promo code you were using. So it was like, It's very much so like it is now. We can pick on any of the true crime shows and say, go to soandso.com/true crime, soandso.com/Rogan, soandso.com, whatever it was. And then on a rolling weekly basis, we were putting into, I think for a lot of the early shops, it was a Google Doc or it was an Excel doc. This was long before having built out internal CRMs where you had some sort of platform that you were pulling, GA in real time, and you were showing them, what the performance looked like. And it was from day one, this that bootstrapping, so-and-so has traction, let's renew for next week. So-and-so has traction, let's book this out 2 weeks from now. So-and-so has traction. And it was this always on churn. And in the early days, especially for those direct consumer brands where podcasting was their lifeline. In my experience, I can't speak for everyone else's, but in my experience, it was let's spend $25,000 this month. And then next month, let's spend 40. And then the following month, let's spend 80. And then the next month, let's spend 110. And it was this machine that moved so quickly. So in my experience here, from day one, there was never a day off because we never knew what the next day would look like. I would finish a plan for brand X, lock it in, and then pretty quickly it would be okay, we've got this money coming in from these newfound sales. What can we do with this? How do we reinvest in the channel?
How do you know what to buy back then? You don't have much data. You got probably a ton of different shows that you can go to. I mean, how many shows were there back then?
Well, back to the original part of the story, I came into the space to find new networks. So what was happening is what networks were there? You asked me who were the players from a brand side, who were the players from a network perspective? So mid-roll was the big one. And then you had kind of the editorial side of your Slate, Panoplies, your WNYCs, your NPRs. Podcast One was there as well. Aside from that, it was a lot of these spin-off, I would meet my buddy Cam, my new buddy Cam, and he had a network, but his network was 5 shows. And then I would meet so-and-so and they would have 8 shows. And it was very fragmented in the sense of you had to contact a lot of different people to find these, I'm calling them networks, but truthfully, it was a grouping of shows where one handler would be selling 5 different shows, or maybe you'd have a host that had 5 different shows. This Week in Tech, the Twit network, Leo Laporte was one of the larger ones, but I look back on it now, it might have been a dozen shows, and Leo was the host of more than half of them. So yes, it was a network, but it wasn't going to a SiriusXM or an iHeart or a Spotify or a Wonder, and our modern day list goes on and on and on, where you could make one phone call and have access to 100 shows at once.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask what's changed, but what was the booking time for some of these shows back then? And I'm curious, did the landing page matter? I mean, you were getting good promo code performance returns, but do you think the landing page matters, generally speaking, that you send people to? Or do you just send them to the homepage?
No, in my heart does. That doesn't make sense. I do believe that it's helpful, because I think now as we see more of these brands enter in, what's the highlight of podcasting? And you and I talk about this all the time: higher household income, higher education level, less likely to be scammed, more digitally savvy. With retargeting, as well as I did, the minute I go to a landing page for a mattress, I'm retargeted by 10 other mattress companies. So your landing page experience has to be solid. Does it need to be customized for the Cam and Luke comedy hour? I don't necessarily think so. Does that help? Probably. But it can't be an as seen on TV thrown together landing page. Sex sells. So have a sexy website. You go to these titans, as we call them, the bigger spenders. You go to a DraftKings website, you go to a BetterHelp website, you go to an AG1, a HelloFresh, the list goes on and on and on. They all have sleek, nice looking websites. So when I get there, I'm more apt to spend some time there. I mean, that's just Luke's theory. I don't know if there's science to this, but in my experience, a strong website helps those first time impulse buyers commit.
Because it's interesting, right? Because that's kind of out of your control in some instances when
100%.
Yeah. And so you gotta kind of work with that. Obviously you could spin up a landing page and make it very custom and everything, but that takes time, it's noise, and it's how much would that actually increase performance? I mean, I asked the question, like, how good is our return on ad spend compared to what it could be right now if we, optimize a few things? I don't really know the answer. I'm sure none of us really do, but someone must have a good insight on that.
Yeah, no, in my career, I haven't done a ton of A/B testing with websites. So since I haven't been able to, like, from a data perspective, compare apples to apples, it would be unfair of me to say, in my X amount of years doing this, this is a fact. I do think it matters at its core. It has to be nice, and it can't be that like chunky, what I refer to like as seen on TV, because I think that digitally savvy audience questions what the product is. Like, where is this coming out of? And when I have a sleek website for this company that I'm being retargeted by, and the one I initially went to, it's tough. The big spenders in podcasting, in my experience, tend to have, especially DR brands, have nice websites.
Yeah, they've really thought about it seems. Who gave you the most important piece of advice early on? And do you still believe that advice?
Wow. I mean, like early on, I remember my first boss, Steven, saying, like, very tongue in cheek, like, anyone can be a host, but it takes someone special to be an influencer. And like, I've probably said that a million times in my career now, where like, when I'm putting a plan together, I'm going after influencers. I mean, like, that's my whole shtick is we're talking about podcasting today, but in reality, like, I work in influencer marketing platform agnostic. So I might go after an influencer that at its core as a podcast, but they also have a YouTube program. They also have an Instagram handle. Nowadays, maybe they're on Rumble. Everybody starting a new podcast right now, as well as I do, they're uploading that as a simulcast on any and all platforms, from X to an RSS feed that's going to live on Spotify and iTunes and wherever you listen to your podcasts, as well as a YouTube and a Rumble feed. And then on the back end, when they say I'm averaging X amount of listens, views, impressions a month, that's across all of those. But like, that's where, I think I got my start, was like going after influencers. I mean, like, in this space in particular, like early days, Leo Laporte was a monster. Adam Carolla had a huge presence. Bill Burr in the early days, like, because there were hosts popping up, especially when podcasting first like hit big. Like, there were people, I mean, I'd love to see those numbers. How many people started a podcast, then 4 episodes later stopped making it?
It's huge. It's huge.
We don't report on those, but they're out there. They never got a chance to end up on a rate card from an advertising perspective. But yeah, so I think that would be from an advice perspective. Also, and I don't know if this was ever said to me, but like, this was definitely my mantra early on, was like, strong relationships on the network side help strong relationships on the brand side. So like, that riding the fence of like fighting for what's right for the brand at all costs, absolutely. But like, being good to those sales partners, those network partners, the hosts themselves, that has, in my experience, led to more strengthened partnerships, more strength, stronger ad reads. I can get you half price inventory, but you're going to get a half price ad read. Like, that type mentality. Like, if you're not good to people, they're not going to be good to you. And I think that was just kind of ingrained to me, ingrained in me early on in the business, is like, just be a good person.
Yeah. I think that's freaking awesome, because at the end of the day, the influencer is, I guess, like, in a lot of ways, your customer as much as the brand is, because they're creating the product. Your product that you're going out to sell the brand is not going to be as good if you don't have that really good product relationship, whatever it looks like. And also, I mean, we see this, but it's a speed thing as well. It's like being able to pick up the phone. Someone falls out of a campaign, you don't have long to actually spend the budget. You need people that you can rely on. And in this day and age, like, some of the response times are like crazy long. And so I think that really, really matters, especially on like the micro influencer level.
Yeah, but even I 100%, you and I are speaking the same language. But I am going to take away the micro influencer statement, because there are some monsters out there that are independent, that aren't through big networks with recording deadlines and lead times and this and that. Where like, if you have their phone number and you can get them to activate, that was one of the questions you asked earlier, was like, what was the lead time on some of these back in the day? Like, as this budget rolled in, we were trying to spend it in real time. So a lot of it, especially if they didn't have a product that I had to send for them to show on screen or experience, I'm thinking of an audiobook company where literally I could send someone a promo code, say, hey, download it, play with it on your phone, see how great it is to work with. What book would you recommend to your audience right now? It was super easy to activate on the fly. So, I mean, like Q5 was the best example of that, where like going into the Christmas season, that week and a half, 10 days between Christmas and New Year's, all of a sudden there's all this budget. All of a sudden there's people that have new devices that need to, download apps on and play with. This budget would come and like, I mean, I remember maybe not working Christmas Day, but surely Christmas Eve, the day after Christmas, trying to activate budget in real time. And like, this was the only way to do it, was just to pound your phone, get people, hey, I just sent you an email. I need you to look at that right now. Let's do this, this, and this. And in the early days, and there's some folks out there that probably remember some of these phone calls where like, you might be spending tens of thousands, if not $100,000 on a phone call, because it was like, I'll get you the IO on Monday, but right now I need this. Can you get these folks to start to record, especially when you had renewals? Like, it was really easy to activate the renewals in real time.
Yeah. What do you think, if you're a network or a publisher, what do you think the guiding metric should be? Like, what should they optimize for to make a buyer's life really easy?
Wow. That is a great question. I'm like processing right now. I mean, part of it is this. Part of it is being easy to work with, because once again, fundamentally, the mantra is, if you're easy to work with, if you're, people want to work with people as much as it matters who the host of the show is. And it's that great, fancy, shiny thing here on the shelf. But like, people want to work with people. And if you're easy to work with, I'm going to continue to come back to you. I'm going to find a way to work with you. I'm going to come back to you and say, Cam, you're so good to work with, but your CPMs are a little bit too high. You're so good to work with, but this host does rough around the edges host reads. Can we figure that out? I think first and foremost, people want to work with people. And then I think one of the biggest hurdles we run into now, as we have more and more of these clients that are planning on the fly, like your fairy tale is a client comes to you and says, this is my budget for October. But the reality of it is the last week of May, I'm frequently getting budget for June. So it's, how do I work with you easily? How do you get back to me quickly? How are your prices fair? Can we have a conversation like this? Like I joked about half price show, half price ad read. Like, that's unfair to say, because there are so many like fire sale remnant opportunities where like a sales entity comes to me and says, hey, Luke, I've got these episodes left over. I've got to dump these because they're first week of June. Can you help me? I'll help you. And like this magic happens where like the client gets the value. Inventory doesn't go unsold. Everybody's happy. We all worked well together. We activated on the fly quickly. That is the biggest hurdle we now face with as these shops get bigger and bigger. And I understand, because they're so massive and there's so many sellers and the CRM in the back end has to be messy. But like, we go to these big entities, and I'm not trying to pick on them because I totally understand why they do it. But the iHearts, the SiriusXMs, the Spotify's, the, insert name of big network here, like they have these very, very strict recording deadlines where like, even if there's an episode available, even if the host is in the recording studio, like sometimes you just can't get through that wall. And that's a hurdle that those sellers like, hey, Luke, hey, Cam, as much as I want to help you with this, I just can't, because 2 weeks out from May 29th is, so-and-so day, like they're handcuffed to the system that they work with. And for that reason, I think that's why we'll always have some of these smaller sellers activating on the fly. Like, it makes sense when you're, New Heights or Caller Daddy or, insert big podcast name, simulcast name here. They get to do that. But the Cam and Luke comedy hour that's recorded in my mom's basement, that's only getting 25,000 downloads, we have to remain nimble.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Because there's so much unsold inventory in the market. Like, everyone knows this. And yet, like, response time is a massive issue. And it just, to me, it's like this really interesting, contradiction where it's like, okay, like, then should I just be focusing on, if I'm a network, on response time? Because if I can increase response time, one metric, response time or booking time or something like that, then I'm going to be so easy for most buyers, and they're going to keep coming back. And then I'm just going to crush and grow quite quickly, because I'm going to attract more talent. because I'm, selling this stuff. I'm getting great partnerships. They're working with brands they love, etc.
Yeah, we're putting the shoe on the network foot, but like in reality, this is a two-way street because I think there's brands. I mean, I'm sure some agencies too. I pray it's not my agency. I pray it's no one on my team. But like, I think we see this brand side too, where a brand brings a sizable campaign in-house and thinks to themselves like, oh, I don't need an agency. I'm going to save money by doing this. And then all of a sudden you have this bottleneck of one or two people brand side that now have this influx of emails where like agency side, I've got a team of people that handle these. I've got dedicated resources that all day, every day, we respond quickly to networks. We respond quickly to brands. Like communication is our lifeline, but we see it on the brand side where like just one person just can't respond to all these emails in a timely, like it's just too much. Right. I sympathize for them. So they're now in a situation where I have this budget I have to spend. I have to find these shows. I've got till June 1st, Monday to do this, but there's not enough time in my day. Like that is the efficiency that an agency brings you. And I jump on here today to sell agency business. That's not my intent. I just enjoy the trip down memory lane and was honored for you to invite me. But like, this is on both feet type.
Yeah, it makes sense. And there's so many assets and everything. Wait, I just need to flick this light on. I'm going to die. It's got a 30-minute timer, you see? So, yeah, I mean, it's even on the buy side, like getting all the materials and everything in a timely manner, it's a pain point because, like everyone needs to get approval from the host, etc. So, yeah, great thoughts.
Yeah, wild. Yeah, bookend to bookend, the process it's not easy. Like I think agencies at scale make it look easy, but the reality of it is from that first email or phone call saying this is what we're thinking until the end of it, like, thank God this is job security for you and I, but like, it's a lot of work.
What do you want to change this industry? One thing
I'd like to change in this industry. Oh, this is an easy one, but right now I'd love to be able to pixel on YouTube.
Okay.
Like
that's easy.
Attribution for however many years now, attribution has been everyone's answer. Like, how do we make attribution stronger? How do we know it's working? What does this look like? Podcasting is having a hard time plugging into many brands' MMMs. So it's like, we're this outsider and a lot of the bigger brands are like, well, we just won't do it. So attribution as a whole is like the easy answer. My super specific answer right now is like, especially as YouTube becomes a bigger player in the space, like I'd love to be able to drop a pixel on the other side of a simulcast.
Yeah. What decision looked right at the time and turned out to be wrong when you look back? Not a small one. Let's talk about a big one.
Oh my God. You're definitely gonna go public with that? No, I'm just kidding.
This is yeah, I'm going to tweet this one. So.
I don't know if I'm going to try to skirt this question. I think the biggest what if I have, because I refuse to use the word regret. Like, I'm
sure. I that's a positive mindset. I like that.
Yeah, no. I'm like a man of faith, and like I believe everything happens for a reason. And this all isn't my plan. Sometimes curves in the road were put my way on purpose. I wouldn't be in this space if not. I'd be in a 10th grade U.S. history class yelling at some kid for putting gum on the bottom of his desk. I think what I question is, and I paused on purpose there because I'm just thinking, what if I went to the sales side? Because that's something people ask me all the time. Like, Luke, you're good with people. Why don't you go to the sales side? In reality, like on the agency side, I'm in the business of sales. You give me your true crime podcast on a silver platter, and then I have to go and talk the brand into it or justify why it makes sense. Or sometimes I'm talking a brand out of something where they're like, I ran into so-and-so at this IAB event and I want to do this. And then I have to be like, I think that's a bad idea because of this, and this. So I think the one thing I question from time to time is like, where would I be in my podcast journey if I had become a sales rep at Network X a decade ago? I love what I do. I love the podcast element of it. I love talking to the networks. I love talking to the brands. But fundamentally, like I love like working with people within my organization. Like I love the mentorship aspect of this. I think that's because I've had so many great mentors in my life, but in my career that like I hate to say giving back because that sounds so cheesy, but like I love that aspect of it. And I look at some of these sales organizations now where like you get a rookie sales rep and it's like next thing you know, I'm teaching them from across the aisle. And I think to myself, if I were in one of those roles, what would that mentorship be like? Because as a network gets bigger, there become more and more salespeople like, So I think that's the what if that I think occasionally goes through my mind.
How much money do you think you've spent in the podcast channel on behalf of brands?
Probably $1 billion. And I don't mean me
Pretty
doing
cool.
I just
That's
mean
pretty cool.
I've been on a team or managed a team of people that have been spending hundreds of millions of dollars over the last 14 years.
Can you remember where you messed up with some spend and you messed up by wasting a lot? Did you ever do that? Or was it always calculated?
No, I mean like from time to time I have a brand when I put a plan together, they're like, how do you know it's gonna work? And I'm like, I don't. Like this is legalized gambling. No, we've taken some shots at, especially when we started really venturing into the YouTube space. Like we've taken some shots with, we don't really know who's watching. We know this is in these particular Google profiles are watching, but in reality, I don't know if it's their child. Like that's my big joke. Like in another half an hour when my kids get out of school, like there's going to be a 9-year-old signed into a 40, almost 3-year-old's Google profile.
Right.
Watching God knows what. So I think from time to time, we've taken some shots at some simulcast and YouTube programming where we don't quite know what the audience is. And some of those bets have paid off to the nth degree. And then some of those bets have turned up with, hey, this was a lesson learned. So I would hate to say that I've ever like taken a swing or wasted, but I mean, we've done some very, very creative strategic learning and we've missed at times. But every test, there should be a takeaway. And sometimes that takeaway is like, this was a bad idea. This didn't work. This particular ad copy doesn't work. This particular type of vertical or genre doesn't work. And sometimes you really, really got to spend money, especially if it's a kind of messy, competitive space where like you might have to, spend some money to figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, being performance orientated, it's like, you're always testing, right? So it's just a big test, really. And it's like, it hurts because you have to spend to learn, but yeah, very learning centric. What's one thing you believe about where advertising is going that most people in the industry are still getting wrong?
Wow, that's deep. I mean, I still, as we go more and more programmatic, as we go more and more digital, I still, in my gut, am like very, very old school. And I wouldn't say that a lot of people get this wrong. I mean, there are brands that still are like, it has to be baked in and it has to be host read. And I'm not quite to that extreme. I mean, like right now, there are networks where like, if I want to work with a particular host, I have to buy a dynamic ad insertion. And I know that in 30 days or 45 days, it's going to be removed, or maybe it's the week of flight. So like I've softened on that, but like in my gut, I still am bread and butter, host read. The host is the influencer. Their audience is going out of their way to find them. So I think that's where like I see programmatic as a vehicle. It's phenomenal from an awareness perspective. I can target an audience and get super low CPMs. But if I'm trying to sell a product and I'm trying to get it in people's hands and households, like I am a host read guy through and through. And I hope, knock on wood, I hope that never changes. So I wouldn't say that that's something that people are getting wrong. I would say that's somewhere where I'm still hung up that other people have quickly, I shouldn't say quickly, people over time have changed their thought process on that.
Well, when you've been close or spent nearly $1 billion and seen what can work so well around it, I mean, that's something, right?
Yeah, no, that's a data-backed statement. I'm not, bobbing for apples here. But yeah, I'm still hung up on the old school of, we know this works. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Not to say that programmatic doesn't have a place, but in my experience, for the most part, if not for all of the part, the host read in content as organic as possible, whether it's dynamically ad inserted or embedded, the more seamless it is. The other thing is like, I say this to networks, like I'll send a host the product, and if they don't like it, I don't want them talking about it. Like I want the end user to be as comfortable with the ad read as possible, and that's part of it. So when someone says, yeah, I don't like it, I don't want to do this, I don't feel comfortable doing this, I don't like that company's website, like I'm all for it. Like that's great feedback for the brand to have. We're not in the business of buying people to make them do an ad read. That is one of the other concerns I have as some of these entities get larger and larger and larger and tend to kind of like own their, influencers, own their hosts, is when I say, hey, would so-and-so be comfortable, would Cam be comfortable with, talking about this pen? When a salesperson's like, yeah, they'll do it. That's a little unnerving to me. Like I want them to go and ask Cam, hey, Cam, do you want to talk about this pen? And for all I know, he has another pen brand that he likes, and that's fine with me. I just want it to be authentic.
Yeah. So if a new brand's coming into the industry, should they be doing, and say they're doing influencer, let's say it's long form, should they aspire for host read baked in, or should they run a programmatic run first, get some signal, or should they be comfortable with DA?
I, at this point, from a data perspective, have seen phenomenal results from both baked in and DAI. So that is one stance that I have softened on, because at one point in time, I was that guy pounding on my desk that was like, it has to be baked in, it has to be host read. I have softened on that stance because I can name a dozen phenomenal partners that only sell DAI that are still incredibly strong. They have incredibly strong, loyal audience followings, better household income, better education, like all those like high points that we talk about. But I am going to start you with a host read campaign. And the other thing is it has to be of a dollar amount. Like we get folks that come to us from time to time that are like, I've got 20 grand to spend. I've got 12 grand to spend. And I say to folks like, hey, why don't we wait another month or two? Wait till you have enough so that we can test a wider swath of shows in a 30-day window, gain some sort of momentum on frequency as far as this like word of mouth, whether it's the same genres or not, as opposed to betting the farm on 3 unique podcasts.
What are you paying close attention to right now that most people in your world are ignoring?
I don't know if they're ignoring it. Well, I know they're not ignoring it. I mean, like the consolidation of the networks and the video first podcasts that I feel like are launching, because that's a lot of the new ones. Like that's the thing I think I'm watching most closely. And a lot of that ties back to attribution. So what is the future of podcasting if the lion's share of the impressions end up falling on YouTube, which I'm not saying they are right now, but what does that look like? So I'm constantly sitting in on, every time Google does some sort of announcement or podcast adjacent, like the fact that they're now trying to get into some sort of DAI in content beta, like that's something I'm watching closely because I'm curious how that will not necessarily affect the current space as much as what about the next new brands coming in, that this is what they get talked into, sold into doing, instead of that host read test that you and I just talked about that like we already know can work. We've been doing it long enough that we know it works. Now you're selling this new product with no data, if hardly any data. I think that's the thing I'm most focused on, like learning more about and watching that, and the 360 partnerships as a whole. Like I think that's something that a lot of folks were using years ago as like a tagline, like, oh, we do these 360 partnerships and you end up on all these platforms. And, there's more and more of these folks. That's going to be the only way you can buy them. Then when you get these assets, whether it be whitelisting or just usage of a cut down or an audio cut down or whatever it is, like, what are you really doing with that as a brand?
Do you like that idea? 360?
I mean, am I doing it at scale with a first test out the gate? Not really. Have we done it and perfected it at scale for some of the bigger partnerships? You look at some of the deals that, are Stephen Bartlett's or our Rogans or our Giggly Squads or our, insert Ashley Flowers with her true crime stuff. Like, I think that is a huge vehicle for a lot of these brands. But once they get to that scale.
Are we thinking 360 is the way because it works really good at that scale, but like maybe in the mid-market with different shows, maybe it doesn't convert as well. And that's like maybe a blind side of the industry.
100%. Yeah. If you're in that mid-market, it's not as viable because it is a huge budget suck. Generally is a huge budget suck. How does that play out? But yeah, I think those are two of the things that I'm watching most closely.
Yeah.
And I think more of these networks are now trying to prioritize that and hire people that can sell that. And what does it look like? It's going to be interesting to see, we have this huge push, and I think we're still having it, where some of these larger networks are able to give guaranteed money to these shows at scale. How long does that last for? We look at like a show like Mark Maron. Like, Mark Maron's no longer in the space. What happened there? Like, did he just gracefully retire? I don't know. I don't know Mark personally, but that was a show for a long time. He was getting guaranteed money. So it's, what does this look like in the years to come? It's something.
So we've covered a lot. This has been very fun, and you are one of the titans in this industry. So we're going to do a couple quick fire questions. First off, what would you want your chapter in your book, in a book to say, in the advertising book to say? It's a quick fire question.
The quick fire. I think that Luke's a good guy. Luke was an honest guy. Luke was good to work with.
Yeah. Incredible. What would you tell a CMO right now that maybe isn't looking at this industry?
This is a long-winded answer, but my quick fire answer is like, this generation of CMOs are, not all, but many are still not yet focused on the digital world that we live in. We still run into a lot of them that it's like TV this and TV that. And it's like, this is the next version of that. Just because the attribution hasn't been able to plug into your MMM yet, do not discount this. And we are able to prove this out now at scale with, some of these amazing third parties. Like, we lean heavily on Magellan or Podscribe or whoever it is, and what they're able to do for us in telling a story is absolutely amazing. Like, just embrace that element of it. Make those folks an extension of your team at the agency level. Help them be, your partner that is neutral, because they're there to report the data, not to make you look good. Magical things can happen.
Wow. All right. Who's someone we should talk to next? Who belongs on this series?
This series, man, Steven Schmick from, he was my first boss at Performance Bridge, which then became Veritone. Incredible mentor, incredible friend, one of the smartest guys I know by far. From the sales side, Lex Friedman probably had one of the biggest impacts on my career from the sales side. He was a good guy and great to work with, and he was one of those guys that taught me along the way. Those would be the two I'd cherry pick.
Let's get them both on. They're great. They're great people. Awesome, Luke. Well, thanks for your time. It's a pleasure as always. And this was awesome.
Thanks for having me. Sorry for the casual Friday appearance. I hope this doesn't.
No, we like it. We like some casual stuff.